The League One campaign is over, the playoffs are finished. Derby County have finally released their retained list, and in this video I'm going to be talking all about Derby County's season as a whole. This might be a rather long one, so go and grab yourself a drink, get yourself some snacks, and let's get into this video. Because obviously it's been a long season for Derby County. It didn't start off the way everybody would have liked it, but it ended the way we all wanted it to, and that is the most important thing. Paul Warne and David Clowes have done an amazing job with not only recruitment, but also getting this team where it needs to be. David Clowes bringing in Paul Warne last season was an excellent decision. It's turned out to be a brilliant decision. And we're lifting that trophy on the final day for second place promotion and beating the likes of Bolton and Peterborough and Barnsley to that second automatic promotion place is something that we can really be proud of. Just 2 years ago, we exited administration and we're already back in an area where we should be, where we've spent a long period of our history. And now it's all about looking forward. But before we look forward to the 24-25 season, let's take a look at our League One campaign. So starting off with the league table, obviously this is something to be massively, massively proud of. Now, there's not many teams who go up automatically with 10 or more losses, and Paul Warne has done it again with Derby County. He did it previously with Rotherham, but Derby County this season, 46 games, 28 wins, 8 draws, 10 losses. And for me, I think it's an excellent record. There's a few losses in there that for me should have been wins or should have at least been draws. There's about 4 draws in there where we conceded really, really late goals that shouldn't have been conceded, late penalties, etc. But overall, I think we really found our feet sort of towards the back end of October, start of November, and we really started to put our performances together. And in a minute, I'm going to go through each month of fixtures, and I think it's just important that we talk about the way we went from a lot of the fan base not really trusting Paul Warne to Paul Warne getting us promoted. There was a big period at the start of the season where a lot of people, including myself, were unsure at what we was actually doing. Because just jumping in, quick reminder, hit the subscribe button, let me know your thoughts on this video down in the comments, and I'll let you now get back to the video. We lost so much ground on the top 2 at the time, and I think at one point we were something like 15 points behind Portsmouth. And obviously, in the end, to finish just 5 points behind, I think, is mega, mega impressive. And there was points where Oxford United were 9-10 points ahead of us. Bolton were 8-9 points ahead of us. And then you also got to look at, towards the back end of the season, you had Barnsley had 3 games in hand on us at one point. Peterborough had 3 or 4 games in hand on us at one point. Bolton had games in hand at one point. But we kept our nerve. We did our job, despite some poor results in that running as well. Now, I'm not saying we were perfect, because we weren't by any means. No team in the league was, as you can see by the fact that every team has lost a game. But we really did put on a show for especially that last third of the season. We had some poor games in there where we should have won, we should have done better, and we would have confirmed promotion earlier if we'd have done that. But what an excellent season for Derby County. If you haven't watched my video from yesterday talking about the playoff final, Oxford United came out victors in that. So your 3 teams going up from League One is Portsmouth, John Massinho. What an excellent job he's done. Derby County, as we're talking about in this video, and Oxford United, who I think, despite losing arguably a really key part of their puzzle in Liam Manning early on in the season, they found themselves promoted through the playoffs, and what an excellent season they've had in the end. But let's start off by looking through all the team data, where Derby County ranked in each metric, and let's just go through it all. So here we have all the data from FootMob. There's a couple of pieces of data which I'm going to show you in here. Now, as you can see by FootMob rating, we were ranked the 3rd best team with a 6.99 rating. Peterborough and Portsmouth, the team ahead. In goals per match, we averaged 1.7 goals per game. 5th in the league, which I was surprised about but wasn't. I know obviously we weren't the top goal scorers in the league. It was quite a bit of a ways off that, but I was surprised with how high we actually were. I thought we would have been a little bit lower than that. You've then got goals conceded per game, where I think was a key part of our season was our defensive solidity. And you look at clean sheets as well on here, where Derby County are also top. And I think it's mega impressive to concede 0.8 goals per game, 22 clean sheets in the season. And if we do just go back to the league table for a second, 37 goals we conceded this season. 37. 20 clean sheets for Joe Wildsmith. What an impeccable season he had. Now, we talk about Paul Warne's football, not really keeping hold of the ball, not really wanting to have control of possession. And it does sort of show in the average possession. We ranked 13th in the league with 51%, which I think does show Paul Warne's style of football. Obviously, we're not a tippy-tappy, keep the ball type of team. We let the opposition have it. We hit them on the counter. We have our own periods. And to be honest with you, I'm not bothered about us playing like that so long as we make the most about it in possession, which is something we definitely did this season. As mentioned, with the goals conceded, we ranked top of the league for clean sheets as well, with 22 clean sheets. Now, something which I was quite shocked about in the end was our expected goals was only 63.8. And if you look at how many goals we scored over the season, we scored 78 goals. So we outperformed our XG by about 15, which is absolutely magnificent over the course of a season. And obviously, stuff like that it's not necessarily representative of performance. I think when looking at XG, not many people outscore their XG. And if you do, that shows that you're doing something right. And for me, Derby County have definitely done something right this season. We outscored our XG. We kept the most clean sheets. We're up there in rating over the season. And I do think it's good that we outscored our XG, but we need to make sure that we keep up that clinical nature heading into the next season, into the championship, with what is looking like going to be pretty much a new team. A lot of new players are going to be heading to the club this off-season. But carrying on with the data, you've got shots on target. We ranked 10th in the league with 4.2 per game. Now, I don't necessarily think that's bad with the style of football we play. We don't control possession. We like to get the ball in the box. But for me, I think we should average a couple more shots on target. I think we should be up and around where Peterborough are, that 5.4 area. But we're not. We did our job. We scored our goals with our 4.2 shots on target per game. And that's the important thing. Now, big chances. We had 105 of them. And we ranked third in the league for that, which I think is really, really impressive. Only Portsmouth and Peterborough above us. But then we look at big chances missed. We missed 61 of those chances that were considered big. And we ranked 6th in the league for that. So obviously there's other teams worse than us, really, with that. Obviously Portsmouth at the top, 66. Stevenage, 63. I always think with those metrics, it's always your better teams that are up at the top end because they obviously create the most chances throughout the league. But I think Derby County put in an excellent performance this season. I think the amount of chances they created, the amount of goals they scored, it's just something you can't really ignore. Now, the next set of metrics. This is where you really find Paul Warne's style of football. Now, accurate passes per match, 279.4, ranking 14th in the league. And that is... it's higher than I expected it to be. I thought we'd be around the 220, 230 mark, but 280, brilliant. Long balls per game, obviously, we average less passes than a majority of the teams in the league by a considerable margin, but we ranked 20th in long balls per game. So the people that want to turn around and say that we're long ball merchants and stuff like that need to watch football, because as much as we do like to hit teams on the counter and we do like to hit a long ball into the channels, ultimately, that isn't what our game is. We get the ball wide, we get crosses into the box, as shown with the next metric, which does not surprise me with a Paul Warne side. I've recently done my dissertation on promoted teams from League One, the Championship and League Two, and Paul Warne sides rank really high for crosses per match, and it's the same here, 5.7 per game, top of the league in that metric, and we've done really well with it. And you then go on to the amount of penalties we've got. You look at some of the teams. Portsmouth have had 13 penalties this season. We've only had 6. Now, we have had more penalties than, 18 teams? Something along them lines. But 18, 16 teams, something like that. But ultimately, there's a lot of penalties that we've not been given. There's a lot of times Sonny Bradley has been absolutely wiped out at the back sticks from a corner or dragged down in the middle of the box, nothing given. Mendes Lang, Barkes and Collins have all been taken out in the box, nothing given. But it's one of those, sometimes as big clubs you get those decisions, sometimes you don't because you're a big club. And the important thing is we got some important penalties at important times, but we also gave away some important penalties, but I believe that's in one of the next slides talking about the data. But penalties awarded, don't really need to worry about that, really. We did what we needed to do. Now, touches in the opposition box, we ranked 7th. Does not surprise me. I'm actually quite surprised we're not higher on this list because of the way Paul Warne likes to play with the crosses into the box, getting the ball into nice areas to create them chances and them goal-scoring opportunities. But 1,040 touches in the opposition box, really good for this league. It's going to be really interesting to see how Paul Warne translates the style of play, the system we've been playing and how he's got it to work in League One. To see if he can translate it to the Championship. It's going to be really interesting to see how that does happen. Now, on to corners. Now, Derby scored a lot of goals from set pieces this season, and it shows with some of the players who are high up in our metrics with goals and assists and things like that. But you look at the corners, we took 295 this season, which is the second most in the league. Only second to Peterborough United, who are the team who have the most shots on target per game, which means they have more opportunities of a goalkeeper save and stuff like that, giving you a corner. So brilliant from Derby to get all those corners. We did take advantage of them, which is massively important, especially if you look at sort of towards the back end of the season. We beat Bolton with a Kane Wilson header from a corner. We beat Blackpool from sort of a second opportunity from a cross. We beat Leyton Orient with 3 corners. I'm pretty sure it was 3 corners. I think we scored a corner on the final day. No, we didn't. I lied. We might have done. I don't know. It's been a long, long season, but we massively, massively benefited from our set pieces and stuff this season, which is something Paul Warne is massive about. If we can carry that on into next season, we won't have to worry about a relegation scrap, in my opinion, because if you can get 15, maybe 20 goals from set pieces, it sort of puts you in a really good position. Now, XG conceded, it says that we're ranked 24th, but ultimately that means you're the best team in the league for this statistic. We've ranked 24th, 37.5 XG conceded over the course of the season, which means that we conceded exactly how many goals we were supposed to concede, which I'm quite happy with. We've done a really good job this season defensively. Vickers and Wildsmith, both their periods in goal have been absolutely excellent. But then we go on to interceptions per match. Now, when I was going through my dissertation, I noted a lot during that some of the best teams in the leagues ranked really low for the defensive statistics. And when looking deeper into it, it's because I noticed that those teams have less defensive actions to commit. When you, not someone like Derby, for example, have more control of the ball, maybe someone like Peterborough, probably lower down, but when you have more of the ball, you give away less, you give less opportunities for defensive actions. And I think it does show, obviously Derby County ranked 14th in the league this season with a 7.5 average. And then in successful tackles, they ranked 9th in 9.7. And both statistics I think Paul Warne will be happy with and proud of, considering the type of team that we are. And although we don't necessarily control games, we control the ball out of possession. We don't necessarily make the most interceptions or the most tackles, but we're always in control on and off the ball. Now, the last set of metrics which I'm going to look at, obviously clearances per match. Again, when talking about defensive actions, you have to remember we're one of the better teams in the league. So the opposition, we perform less defensive actions because the opposition have less of the ball and we control the game in different ways. And we ranked 14th in that with 21.1 clearances per match. We won possession in the final third 3.4 times per match, which I think is a bit low, if I'm completely honest. And I am quite shocked by it, but then ultimately, when watching Derby County, how often did we have a team penned back? We usually sank into sort of our own half, won the ball on the halfway line, broke in. So I would be interested to see someone like Footmob or SofaScore or something like that bring in a metric for like possession won in the middle third, possession won in the defensive third, so we can sort of compare and contrast. Because I think if we had the metrics for possession won in the middle third, I think Derby would be top of that list, in my opinion. We then go on to penalties conceded. We conceded 6 this season, and 2 of them cost us wins, and one of them cost us a point. So it's one of those with penalties. I think we've gave away a lot of soft ones. Well, I think the majority of the ones we've given away this season are quite soft, but it's one of those, really. Then we go on to saves per match, which again links in to those defensive actions. And Derby County perform less defensive actions. And ultimately that means that the opposition has less opportunities to score against you because they have less opportunities in those areas. And Derby with 2 saves per match. Now, that either means that we're letting in loads of goals, or there's less shots on target, which means the defence are doing their job. And that's what I think it is for Derby County. We're allowing less shots on target. We're blocking more shots. We're obviously then, when we do have those saves to make, Joe Wildsmith normally pulled it out of the bag. Josh Vickers similarly too. But then fouls per match, 10.6, quite low down the pecking order, which I think shows that we're not a dark arts team. We don't commit many fouls to sort of stop teams in their tracks, and I think that's important to talk about. And then if we go on to yellow cards and red cards, and in the discipline metrics, we've got 2 red cards, which one of them was rescinded. So ultimately we have 1. And then in yellow cards, we ranked 21st there as well, with 79 over the course of the season. And I do think that is really good. It's showing, although, yes, we did have a few players who had suspensions over the course of the season because of yellow cards and stuff, ultimately, we're quite good defensively. And we don't give up many fouls. When we do, we don't give away many yellow cards. Although I was quite surprised by this. I thought we picked up a numerous amount of yellow cards, but 79 is actually lower than I expected. But now we've gone through all the metrics, I'm going to now go into the fixtures over the course of the season. So if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Let me know your thoughts on this video so far. Are you enjoying this longer style review video? Because I'm trying to see what we can do heading into the new season for content. So let me know some ideas and thoughts down in the comments. Now, I've spoken about Derby County's start to the season a couple of times over the course of this video, and we lost 3 of our opening 6 games in August, and it was quite a disappointing start. Wigan at home was 2 mistakes. Blackpool at home, we just got played off the park, and I really thought Blackpool would, at that point, then go on to run away with the league. Now, I know it was a cup game, but we got absolutely destroyed. Burton away, not necessarily the greatest performance on planet Earth, but we tucked away our chances and we ran away with all 3 points. I think a lot of people on that day probably would have said that Burton were the better side. And at that point in the season, I believe they were higher up the league than us. And I believe come the end of September, at the end of August, I believe Burton were quite far ahead of us in terms of league position. And we didn't carry it on from that Burton game. And then we go and lose at Oxford, which again was another individual mistake which cost us that win. Well, it cost us everything in that game, really. And then obviously Fleetwood at home, Martin Waghorn, what a goal he scored that day. I'm sure it was Waghorn who scored it. It was Waghorn into Washington goal, or the other way around. And it was a really good performance that day. But ultimately, we didn't score enough. But that all changed heading to Peterborough. And I believe we went 1-0 down in that Peterborough game. And then all of a sudden, Marty Waghorn just turned into an absolute god. I think he scored a 16-minute hat-trick. And that was 3 of the 7 goals he scored over the course of the season. And what a performance it was that day by Derby County, because we really had like a 20-30 minute spell where we really shut down Peterborough. They couldn't get out their own area, couldn't get out their own half, and we really showed them what we're capable of. But the big problem was we just didn't do them performances enough early on in the season. And I think Paul Warne mentioned a lot over the course of the season how his teams build into the season, and I just felt at this point we was not building into anything. Now, 3 wins out of our first 5 league games wasn't too bad. 3 wins out of our first 6 games in general, not horrific, but it wasn't where we wanted to be. Especially when Pompey were, I think they'd won 4 of their first 5, or I think they'd won all 5 of their first 5 league games. It was one of those where we're looking at other teams in the division and it just wasn't quite good enough. Just jumping in, quick reminder, hit the subscribe button, let me know your thoughts on this video down in the comments, and I'll let you now get back to the video. And we moved into September, and September didn't start great with that defeat to Bolton Wanderers at Bolton, but that was covered in controversy. Bolton Wanderers had gave away a penalty to Derby County in the first half, which we put away and went 1-0 up, but then all of a sudden, Derby County had their goalkeeper sent off and it completely changed the game. And Derby County did then get their goalkeeper back, Joe Wildsmith. His red card was rescinded after the game, but the damage had already been done. We got beat by a deflection, which put them 2-1 up. And although we played really well up until the sending off, we obviously just couldn't hold on because it's really hard when you're playing against one of the best teams in the league with 10 men, and that is what we struggled with, and it was a shame to come away with that result. We also lost Jake Rooney on that day, which ended up being a season-ending injury. So it was a disappointing game on the whole because we performed well and got screwed, really. Not only did we get a sending off and a loss, but we also lost who, in my opinion at the time, was probably our best player to a long-term injury. And then we played Portsmouth at home, and I've said this a lot of times this season. There was a lot of teams that we've played this season where I've gone, how are these where they are? And on that day, Derby County could have won, in my opinion, 2 or 3-0. We should have won this game. We conceded late on. I think it was Colby Bishop who popped up with a goal. And it was a good point for Pompey. They kept their unbeaten run going, and we just picked up another point. And it wasn't good enough that day. And if we'd have won that game, it would have completely changed the complexion of the season in the end. We then played Lincoln at home in the EFL Trophy, and really good performance that day. 2-0 win. We just sort of did the job. Then we went away to Carlisle, picked up a good 2-0 result away from home, and Carlisle at that point were performing quite well. Obviously, they were one of those sides that sort of started well, lost a few of their key players to injury, and it really sort of changed the complexion of their season. Losing players like Callum Guy for them was very disappointing, especially, I believe he's their captain, and it was disappointing for him to end his season, really. But Derby then faced Cambridge at home, and at the time, Cambridge were, I believe they were 7th in the league at this point, and we just couldn't break them down. It was one of them games where I thought it should have been a must-win for Derby County, and Paul Warne always says, early on in the season, get points on the board, and we got a point on the board. We didn't lose, and that was the important thing, but I think we could have got more from the game. I just don't think we really went for it, and whether that was down to Paul Warne sort of thinking early season mentality, there's a long way to go, but for me, I think we could have won that game. And if you then put both of them games, Derby versus Portsmouth and Derby Cambridge, together and add the points on, you will get 4 more points, and we end up a point behind Portsmouth on the final day of the season. You also rectify the result at Bolton, where really, if we'd have had 11 men on the pitch, I think we come away winners that day. We then win the title. And although it's probably not right to look back at it that way, that's just the way that I'm always going to look back at it, because it's big moments like that which cost you big prizes in the end, and it's those results in these games that cost us in the end. And then we go on to October, and it was sort of, if you obviously close out September with 4 unbeaten, we then go unbeaten for another 3. A 3-1 away win at Blackpool, which was, it felt like a turning point at the time, but it wasn't. But it was a really good performance on the night. We put in an excellent display. Corey Smith scored, and I just felt we were on a different planet that day. I thought we was a really, really good team. And I went into that game very, very scared after the performance that Blackpool put in against us. But then we went away to Cheltenham. They just got rid of their manager, I believe, and hadn't picked up a point all season, hadn't scored all season. And then what happens? Derby County draw 1-1 with Cheltenham Town. It couldn't have been any more Derby County. It was a disappointing result, but the performance was there. We could have won the game. We did enough to win the game. Then we went away to Notts County in the EFL Trophy, picking up a 2-1 win. And looking back on that game, we could have won that game a lot more convincingly. I think we could have been 4 or 5-0 up that day before half-time, and we just didn't take our chances. And it was one of those games where it really showed where our problems were. And I think those problems persisted throughout a majority of the season. But we won 2-1, which was brilliant. But it should have been 4 or 5-0 at half-time. They'd have nothing to play for. It would change the game. But then we go away to Shrewsbury in what was a horrific performance. It was dreadful. It was not anywhere near the calibre of Derby County, and it really caused a few feathers to be rustled within the fan base. Now, Derby County rectified it at home with a 2-0 win against Exeter, but then we went away from home and lost 3-1 to Stevenage, and that Stevenage game, for me, was the big turning point of the season. There was obviously crowd trouble. Paul Warne got the backing of David Clowes not a few days after, which sort of really changed the fan base's perspective on the season. It was sort of a case of, we've got to put up and shut up here because he's not going anywhere. And then we really, really turned it around. We put in an excellent performance in that 4-0 Northampton win at Pride Park Stadium. Max Bird bagged a brace, and what a player he was in that game. Absolutely brilliant performance. I thought Connor Washington had a good day that day as well. But the month of October was good, but it had some poor games in there. Obviously, the Cheltenham game, losing to Shrewsbury and Stevenage. Stevenage at the time, I think, were 3rd in the league. So it just made the result look 10 times worse than what it actually was. And that was the disappointing thing that we had to deal with that day. And that's what caused a lot of the problems. I believe, I can't remember if it was Shrewsbury or Stevenage, where Conor Horahan came over to the fans. And I have to respect Conor Horahan for that, because I know he's captain, but he doesn't have to do that. But he did, and what a servant he has been over the 2 years. Obviously, his contract expiring and him moving on, which we'll get into later on. But it was one of those October, but we head into November, and what a turnaround. Obviously, the performance at Crewe wasn't great. We obviously somehow absolutely ruined them in the last 5 minutes of the game, scoring twice in added time to take it to a replay, which, to be honest with you, I'd preferred to have lost that game. We then played Wolves in the EFL Trophy. James Collins scored a hat-trick, but we played a lot of youth players that day. The likes of Bayo Fapatu, Dan Cox got on the pitch, Adisa Asande, Lennon Wilden, Tony Weston, Darren Robinson all came on the pitch at times. And it was a really good performance. And a lot of those players, Cruz Allen, another one who came on, really showed what they were capable of, in my opinion. I think some of them put in some really good performances for the time that they had on the pitch. And then Derby had a home game against Barnsley, and what a performance that was. And we scored some really good goals in that game, and a team Barnsley, who I believe at the time were above us in the league, and we really put on a clinic that day and showed them who we were and what we were capable of. And we're going to just skip over that Crew game. I'm just ignoring it. I don't want to think about it because what a dreadful performance. Go 1-0 up dead early on and then just absolutely shit the bed. And that's just the best way to put it, really. We did shit the bed that day, and that's just how it is, how it was. And you can let me know your thoughts, obviously, on these months in the comment section if you want to. Obviously, you don't have to, but it'd be nice to have some interaction down there. And then, obviously, the 2-1 win against Bristol Rovers, that was a fairly decent performance as well. And the Port Vale away win. We've put in some good performances during this time period, especially after that loss to Stevenage. If you discount the FA Cup Crew games, we won what? Northampton, Wolves, Barnsley, Bristol and Port Vale. So that's 5 in a row we won. If you discount the FA Cup games, because we just ignore those. We don't have to talk about those because they weren't great. And then we go to December, which was the turning point of our season. It was an absolute monstrosity of a month. We scored 3 goals on 4 different occasions, beating Fleetwood in the EFL Trophy 3-0. We then went away to Leyton Orient and won 3-0. And Leyton Orient at the time were putting in some really good performances. We then let ourselves down at home versus Wycombe. We gave away a penalty really late on in the day, and I believe it was late on. It might have been in at half time, but I know it was before the break, before either the end or the break, and that cost us a point. Cost us 2 points. Sorry. We then put in a fantastic performance versus Lincoln, who after that day really went on and hit some really good form. But we went and won 3-1 versus Lincoln, and they'd not quite found their feet in the division. But we put in a great performance and sort of stopped them playing. And it was one of those where I thought we made Lincoln look bad rather than Lincoln making us look good because they were bad. And then we went to Wigan Athletic, and for me, that was a massive game for us. Going away, it was Boxing Day, winning 1-0 in a tough place to go against a fairly decent Wigan side. Now, I know the end result of the league table doesn't really show how good they were. Points deductions and the off-field problems that they've had obviously impact the quality of squad they've got. But Wigan were a fairly decent side, and picking up that 1-0 win that day was excellent. And then the 29th of December, going 2-0 down against Oxford within, 10-15 minutes was crazy. And I really thought, oh, here we go again. But no, we came back. Late winner from Liam Thompson, I think it was, who scored the winner in the end. It was either Thompson or Cashin, but both scored that day. What a performance to turn that game around. We kept patient, we kept plugging away at them, and we came away victorious. And I think that was one of the games which put us sort of in contention for the automatic promotion places, and this was the month that did it. Obviously, ignore the EFL Trophy game. In this month, we picked up 12 out of 15 points, which was absolutely massive. We then move over to January, and just jumping in, quick reminder, hit the subscribe button, let me know your thoughts on this video down in the comments, and I'll let you now get back to the video. January was difficult because it started difficult with a difficult game against a difficult team in Peterborough, and it looks okay, but it reminded me of the start of the season. We dropped that game to Peterborough in the final minute of the game. Then we go and beat Fleetwood away from home, which was, I think they could have won that game. I don't think we was very good that day at all. I think we were just blessed with the talent we had on the pitch. And then we lose to Bradford in the EFL Trophy when I think we would have been 2 games away from Wembley if we'd have won that. And it was a very, very disappointing performance. I thought we were awful on the day. Just didn't really... It felt like we didn't try to win. And that was the disappointing part of the day. Then we played Burton the week after, live on Sky TV. Went 2-0 up, absolutely cruising, and then just bottled it. We bottled about a 15-minute period of that second half where we really let Burton get back into the game. They got back level, and then late on in the day, Conor Hourihane, Captain Conor, saved the day with a tremendous volley from the edge of the box. And it was a massive 3 points when it comes to the end of the season. If we only draw that game, we finish, a point above Bolton or level with Bolton or something like that. So absolutely massive, massive result in the grand scheme of things looking back. Then we went to Lincoln, and we could have lost 4 or 5-0 that day. We were really, really poor. Erin Cashin got spun left, right and centre by Joe Taylor, as did everybody in the back 3, back 4 that day. I thought Lincoln were excellent, and I think it went to show by the run of form they'd been on since losing to us. They've really turned their season around, and what an impressive turnaround they had. Obviously just couldn't quite make the playoffs, but excellent nonetheless. Then we went away to Reading with the opportunity to go into, I think we had the opportunity to go into the top 2. Could have been to go top. So we'd clawed back all that deficit that we'd lost earlier in the season, and then we just put in a poor performance. Didn't really create a lot. We brought on John Jules with about 20 minutes to go, and then he gets injured after about 5 minutes. So we're playing with 10 men for the final 10 minutes. So there was no chance of really getting anything out of it then. But then we played Cheltenham at home, and I thought Cheltenham played us off the park for a good half an hour. But we came away 2-1 winners. We took our chances, and that was the important thing. And January reminded me of the start of the season. 3 losses, 3 wins, and a draw. It was just one of those periods where I wasn't exactly best chuffed with the way we were playing. I felt like we were getting results against the okay sides and not putting in performances against the teams that were half decent. Because I think Reading were fairly decent this season. I thought Peterborough were fairly decent this season. Lincoln, obviously, brilliant this season. So it's one of those really where I just felt like we were slipping back into old habits of beating the bad teams, struggling against the good teams. And then we go to February, and what a brilliant start to the month. 3 wins and a draw in the first 4 games. Beating Charlton, drawing with Shrewsbury, which wasn't great, but you can get over it because of the run of form we'd been on. Then beating Exeter 3-0 away from home, which was an excellent performance, but it lost us James Collins. James Collins got an injury that day, which was supposed to rule him out for the season, but it didn't, as we all know. He came back after about 6 or 7 weeks, which was really good going to make sure he could close out the season. And then we beat Stevenage at home. Louis Sibley late winner. What an excellent game that was. Proper pushed it in the face of Steve Evans when we won that one. But then we lost back-to-back games for the first time, I think, in the league in the entire season. And it was to Barnsley and Charlton. Now, we'd got into the top 2 after beating Charlton 1-0 away from home. And in the Barnsley game, they had a couple of games in hand and were about 6 points behind us. They beat us. Then all of a sudden, we're looking over our shoulder. Got Barnsley fans going, that's got us top 2. Bolton fans rubbing their hands together. Peterborough fans getting all excited about the automatic promotion race, which did carry on for a majority of the end of the season. And then we obviously went on to lose against Charlton, which then gave them even more opportunities to close in on us. But when we seemed to drop points, so did those teams. And that was the best part about the back end of this season. Whenever we drop points, they drop points. Never really was it where I felt like we weren't in control. And I had a massive debate about it over on Twitter throughout the back end of the season. I had a massive debate on it through the back end of the season. I think it was after the Northampton game. It might have been after the Wickham game, where there was Bolton fans telling me they were in control and Derby fans telling me Bolton was in control. But for me, I didn't think they were. I thought we had full control, and being ahead, in my opinion, ever since the points deduction season, my whole mindset towards the league table has changed. I used to think games in hand were brilliant, but now I think points on the board over games in hand, and I think that's what we did. You obviously look at how we ended the month. Back-to-back losses. We then move into March, and we win 5 out of the 6 games. We score 2 games in a row, beating Port Vale 3-0 and Bristol Rovers 3-0. Dwight Gale came in at this point and put in some really good performances. We then go and beat Reading 2-1 at home, which I thought was going to be a disastrous game. I thought Reading were going to beat us because Reading always seem to beat us, but it's just one of those things, isn't it? So we go with that, and then obviously we go into the Bolton game, and it was a massive, massive game. If we lose, it puts Bolton right back in it, and what a performance we put in that day. We really shut down Bolton. Joe Wildsmith, what an amazing save to stop Bodvarsson scoring in the first half. Made some other good saves that day as well. But we came away 1-0 winners, which put it firmly in our hands to take control of the League One automatic promotion race. But then, in what was essentially a free hit, we go and lose at Northampton. Now, Northampton had nothing to play for that day. And it was one of those games where we were all over them. We could have been 2 or 3-0 up after 10, 15 minutes. Wagor missed a good chance. Ibu Adams missed a good chance. I think Mendes Lang missed a good chance. And they went down the other end after us missing one of the chances and scored, which it was a brilliant finish. But it just showed where Derby lacked. We went behind and we just couldn't get ourselves back into the game because Northampton just sat in there and didn't have anything to play for really anyway. They had the point and, well, they had the 3 points in the bag and they just sort of just played with us really, in my opinion. And then we faced Blackpool at home in my opinion, what was a really, really important game because I believe on that day Bolton were playing one of the lower down teams and they were winning, and Ibu Adams popped up with what was eventually given goal of the season, which I think now come the end of the season, I think Max Bird's screamer on the final day should be goal of the season. But Ibu Adams scored an amazing goal to win us that game, and what a performance it was in the end. And we really shut down Blackpool. I thought Karamako Dembele was brilliant on the day, but just couldn't create anything because of how good we were defensively. Obviously, after the Northampton game, though, we lost Sonny Bradley. So defensively, we was a bit all over the place, and we lost Forsyth in the Bolton game because of injury. We lost Bradley to a red card against Northampton. And then we go to Portsmouth. What a performance we put in away at Portsmouth. I still think we should have won the game. But a 2-2 draw, based on where both teams were, was a fairly decent result. It meant Pompey weren't really in trouble for the title. It meant we sort of kept our gap to Bolton. And Joe Ward really came onto the show, and so did Corey Blackett-Taylor that day. What an amazing performance those two put in. But Joe Ward got injured in the game, and that then cost him the final 4 games of the season because he had to go and have an operation, which I hope he's going to be back for the start of next season for pre-season because it's massively important he doesn't miss pre-season again. But Derby then headed to Wickham the week after. And if we'd have won this game, we win the title at Cambridge. And that was my only disappointment throughout this final month. If we'd have won that Wickham game, we'd have been promoted at Cambridge. And I predicted we'd get promoted at Cambridge. But we draw that game at Wickham. We have some gilt-edged chances. Corey Blackett-Taylor had a massive one after about 10 minutes and just missed the target. It was a sitter, absolute sitter. Got absolutely battered for it over on Twitter by opposition fans, our own fans. It was all over the place, that chance. But then Bolton had their own similar moment a few games later in a game which they really needed to win, which ultimately helped us get promoted. But then we played Leyton Orient at home and 3 set pieces got us the win. But it was shaky because although we were the better side on the day by far and the set pieces really showed us what we were capable of, really. It's exactly what Paul Warne wants from Derby County. We hadn't scored in open play since that Joe Ward goal. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was just hard to look at that we weren't scoring properly. We hadn't scored with a forward since the Reading game, which was Dwight Gale, which then made it even worse to look at, really, because although we needed 4 points out of the final 2 games, it was difficult to look at the team that was struggling to score goals. But we went into Cambridge. What an excellent goal Nathaniel Mendez-Lang scored in that game. Breakaway, counter-attack, pure Paul Warne. Louis Sibley breaks away to the halfway line. Beautiful pass past the defender, just in front of the goalkeeper as Nathaniel takes it round, back of the net. What a finish. And what a moment that goal was. That was when I truly believed Derby County were going to get promoted. Winning that game and keeping the 3-point gap to Bolton, it sort of made everything clear to me that Derby County were going up. And then we get to the big day. Carlisle at home. Max Bird after 5 minutes. What a finish. In my opinion, goal of the season. You can let me know yours down in the comments. But I thought it was a fairly good performance against Carlisle. I think we spent about half an hour where the occasion got the better of us after scoring that first goal. But I never felt threatened by Cambridge, and that's the important thing. I was never threatened. Cambridge by Carlisle, sorry. And what a performance that day, and what an occasion, what a moment. If you want to go and see my review of that game and all the scenes after the game on the pitch, and even during the game, I'll link the video somewhere on the screen at some point during this video, so make sure you check that out, because it was an amazing day. And you can obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments, but I thought that just showed what Derby County were. Not just the performance on the pitch, not just the pitch invasion, but the day as a whole was, in my opinion, it was an incredible day. And I was so nervous going into the game. I thought, we've seen this time and time again. Derby just need a point, and they balls it up, and we didn't. And that was the most impressive part for me. It was incredible to see, really. It was just jumping in. Quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts on this video down in the comments, and I'll let you now get back to the video. It was a moment I'll never, ever, ever forget. But now, let's take a look into the signings that we bought in this season, and they're all on the screen, but I'll talk them out to you. We bought in Curtis Nelson, and he wasn't really given much hype when he came in, but he played 51 games, 4,506 minutes, scored twice. We then bought in, obviously, Callum Elder, 26 games, 1,205 minutes, 1 assist. Obviously, injuries impacted his season. Sonny Bradley, despite the fact that, in my opinion, didn't have a great season, he still made 41 appearances, 2,312 minutes, 3 goals and 1 assist. Kane Wilson, I thought, had an excellent season, 49 games, 3,057 minutes, 2 goals, 6 assists. Corey Blackett-Taylor took a while to get going, but when he did, I thought he was really good against Blackpool. I thought he was really good against Portsmouth. 12 games, 416 minutes, 1 assist. Tyrese Forner, I thought he started well, had a couple of bad games, came back in, did really well, and then disappeared. And 26 appearances, 1,373 minutes, 2 assists was excellent for me. I thought he did a job. Obviously not your world beater, but he did a good job for me. You then got Josh Vickers, played 12 games, 1,030 minutes in total, 3 clean sheets, 11 goals conceded. You've then got Martin Waghorn, who I spoke about earlier on in this video, 27 games, 1,070 minutes, 7 goals. 3 of those coming in like a 20-minute period against Peterborough United. You've then got Connor Washington, 22 games, 827 minutes, 3 goals, 2 assists. Now, he never hit the performance criteria to pay Rotherham, apparently, so I think that deal was excellent. I do have a feeling that Derby will try and move him on this summer, although will Warne keep him to try and keep him about because he knows what he wants? That's the discussion which is going to be had at the club. I believe it's probably already been had, to be completely honest with you. Obviously, Ibu Adams, a player who we bought in on loan, and what a season he had for us. 17 games, 1,434 minutes, 1 goal, 1 assist. An excellent addition to midfield. Brilliant performances throughout, and really changed the perspective of our season. You've then got Ryan Niambi, 21 games, 1,507 minutes, having to go to AFCON and then picking up an injury when he got back really hindered his season. We probably would have had the job done earlier if it wasn't for that injury. But it happened. Next man came up. We still got the job done. Dwight Gale came in when James Collins got injured. 6 games, 325 minutes, 3 goals and an assist. Elliot Embleton we saw twice, 111 minutes, no goals, no assists, and it was a poor transfer for all involved, really. Picking up that injury when he did, it was disappointing because I thought he'd just put in a fairly decent performance, but it's one of those, and we won't be going back there, I can't imagine. And then Tyrese John-Jules, another player who suffered from injuries a lot this season, only got to play 14 games with 375 minutes, only 2 goals. Now, I thought he showed masses of sparks when he did play, but unfortunately just wasn't enough, in my opinion, to warrant a new contract when his Arsenal deal expires. But that's just my opinion. You can let me know yours down in the comments. So, with that being said, with the season reviewed, everything gone through, shall we take a look at the current squad of players that we have, the players that are leaving, the ones that are in talks, and what is staying about? Now, you will have already seen this depth chart if you follow me over on Twitter or if you watched my retained list video. But here's what we have. So we've got Vickers in goal. We've got Nelson, Rooney, Sonny Bradley, Darren Robinson, Erin Cashin as centre halves. Now Robinson can go into midfield. Rooney can go out to right back. Then on the right hand side we've got Kane Wilson, Ryan Nyambe, Joe Ward. Obviously Nyambe can come into the middle. Wilson and Ward can play further forward. In the midfield we've only got Tyrese Fornah and Liam Thompson contracted for next season. At left back we've got Callum Elder and Craig Forsyth. Obviously, Forsyth can come into centre half. Elder can play a little bit further forward. He's done it a couple of times this season. And then, as wide players, we've got Corey Blackett-Taylor, Mendes Lang and Tom Barkhuizen. Obviously, Barkhuizen has played in sort of like a 10 role. He can play through the middle, worst case scenario, so can Mendes Lang. I think Blackett-Taylor can play on either side, but his preference is the left. And then through the middle, we've got Connor Washington and Dejan Brown. Now, obviously, we're lacking a bit of depth. In my opinion, we're going to need to bring in 10, 11 players. I think depending on where we see Forsyth, we either need a centre-back or a left wing-back. I think we need 3 or 4 high-quality midfielders. I do think we'll probably send Tyrese Fornah out on loan, but it'll be interesting to see Paul Warne's plans with him. Maybe even move him on completely, but it will be interesting to see. Obviously, up front, I don't think Washington's good enough. I don't quite think Dejan Brown's ready. Obviously, there's also Lennon Wheeldon, Tony Weston, sort of wasting in the wings. Although I'm not sure if Tony Weston's still about. His contract might have expired. But forget that. So you've got Washington and Brown. If we look over on the left-hand side in the red at the bottom, James Collins is still in talks over a potential new deal. So he could join that. But I do think we need 2 strikers just to lower the age profile of that area. I do probably think we need 1 or 2 wingers as well. Mendes Lang is over 30. Tom Barkhuizen, I think, is 30 as well. So it would be good to get a young couple of wingers in, just so we're sort of prepared for the future, because that's sort of a problem that we could have. Obviously, Mendes Lang is signed until 2026. Barkhuizen has another year. Blackett-Taylor until 2027, I'm told. Although I thought it was 2026 as well. So, and obviously Sibley is also in talk, so he could play left wing back or in the middle or in those 2 wide areas. But we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, it's now time to look at the players who are leaving. You've got Conor Hourihane, who had a really good season, but in my opinion, lost his legs around January. I think it's the right decision to let him go. The rumour has it that he's going to Barnsley on a player-coach deal, but we'll see what happens with that. Corey Smith is a player who I said originally that I think we should have kept, but it's one of those where it's a 50-50. Waghorn and Gale, for me, I agree with getting rid of. Wrong side of 30. probably want to play football rather than retire. And I think if they stayed here, they're not really going to play. So they've got a better opportunity of doing that if they're free to the world. And then obviously Scott Loach, an excellent man behind the scenes at Derby County, getting involved in all the coaching setup with the academy and things like that. It'll be interesting to see if he carries on with that, if he's allowed or not. But I can see him going into coaching in some way, shape, size or form. I do believe he has a goalkeeper coaching business anyway. So he'll be all right. Obviously ending with promotion was brilliant for him. But then losing Joe Wildsmith for me is the big one. Really, really good goalkeeper. And I think whoever signs him is picking up an amazing player. Distribution's hit and miss, but he's an excellent shot stopper, commands his box. So it'll be interesting to see where he does end up. Now, I know this has been quite a long video, but if you have got to this point, make sure you do hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. And let me know what type of videos you want to see during the off-season. We're going to get up to date with the European Championships. We're going to have loads of videos coming out about that over the next few weeks. We're going to try and keep up with the transfer targets as well, so do make sure you stay tuned for all those videos. And if you have not done so already, as I've just said, hit that subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts on Derby County season down in the comments, and I'll catch you in my next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.